Alright, so here's the deal. Stealing or copying other people's characters and using them as your own is wrong, right? I assume most of my viewers already know this. The young furs who may not have heard this beforehand, I'm telling you now, it's bad. Don't do it. So are we all in agreement? Yes? Good. But here's the issue with this topic. How can you tell the difference between a stolen character and a similar character? Where do you draw the line between copying and inspiration, or even coincidence? Now in some cases it's obvious. For example, my friend Yui once had her character Jet stolen. The thief took Jet's reference sheet, recolored his hair, and posted it as their own character, not even changing his name. That is no doubt theft and is not okay. Don't do that, kids. In situations that don't involve direct art theft, however, the distinction between copy and coincidence can be difficult to make, and may vary from case to case, and there are a lot of factors to be considered. It is for this reason that I'm not going to give any hard-paced rules for identifying copied characters, or for some percentage of difference your character needs to have from other characters in order to be original. Instead, I'm going to discuss some of the complexities on the topic and how they all work together in determining whether or not a character has been stolen. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to focus primarily on the design aspect of copying, rather than throwing in the story aspect as well, but the principles carry over to both. The first factor you need to consider is complexity. How unusual are your character's colors and markings? If you have something very unusual like this, and you see a similar character floating around, chances are much higher that that other character was copied than if you have something more generic like this. In general, the more simple and naturalistic your character is, a gray husky with a white underside for example, the more likely it is that other people have used that same idea, regardless of whether or not they've seen your character. I'll give you an example. Many years ago, when I was around 11 or so, I was very active in the Balto fandom. At the time, it was quite the fad to make different versions of Alu's unnamed littermates in the second movie, the most popular choice being the red-faced pup due to a really well-known version, Kiona, owned by a user called Cat Who Has 14 Tails. Because most people were determined not to steal Kiona and the others, they would often change the markings from the ones seen in the movie, myself included. I decided to give my version long markings on her front legs, rather than just the back legs like the movie version. Shortly after posting this character, another young user came to me demanding that I change those markings, because she had used them too, and was convinced that I had copied her. In truth, I had never seen her character before. Using the same leg markings was a complete coincidence. So here's the question. Should I have been forced to change my character's markings simply because another character that I'd never seen before had the same markings? No, I don't think that it is. You can't copyright markings or color schemes. The other user had no authority to force me to change my character simply because it happened to be similar to hers. But what if it hadn't been a coincidence? What if I did copy her? How do you tell the difference when you see a character similar to yours? Once again, complexity plays a part. You can't really claim natural patterns or markings as your own exclusive property. Now on a side note, does that mean that simple or generic designs are inherently bad, discouraged, or undesirable? Not at all. There is absolutely nothing wrong with simple or generic designs. If you have one, however, you do have to be prepared to accept that other people will have similar designs, and those that do probably aren't copying you. You have to be okay with that, and not throw a fit every time you see something kind of similar. That aside, let's address another factor in determining whether or not your character has been copied. Do you know for sure whether or not the user in question is familiar with your work? If they are, the chance is obviously higher that they took at least some degree of inspiration from your character. If not, though, even if your character isn't super generic, there is still a chance that the similarities could be coincidental. Is a coincidence guaranteed? No, but there's still that chance. Let me tell you another story. I have an OC named Michi, the eldest son of Inuyasha and Kagome from the manga series Inuyasha. He is often paired up with my friend's OC Yukimi, daughter of Koga and Ayame from the same series. As children, this affective is often very one-sided, with Yuki pining after Michi as a young schoolgirl, minus the school, and Michi running away from a fear of cooties as little boys do. As adults, however, they develop a mutual affection and eventually marry. Browsing DeviantArt one day, I stumbled across a picture that at first I thought was fan art of Michi and Yuki. Reading the description, however, I found that it was meant to depict someone else's OCs. I likely would have written it off as a bizarre coincidence were it not for one little detail. I recognized the artist. It was somebody who watched me, and even regularly favorited and commented on my work. I did mention to this artist that her OCs looked eerily similar to mine and my friends, and she claimed that she hadn't intended it. However, given that the characters were so similar, from color scheme, to outfits, to parentage, to even the relationship between them, and that I knew for a fact that this person actively followed my work, yeah, it seems a bit fishy, doesn't it? Now, to this artist, if you're watching, I'm not angry with you, and I'm not going to throw a fit or force you to change your characters. However, I do admittedly remain unconvinced that you took absolutely no degree of inspiration from Michi and Yuki. And if you in fact did, well, I do wish that you'd at least be straightforward about it. All that said, while it's definitely true that taking or copying somebody else's character and using it as your own is wrong, I feel that furries, and really the online art/OC community at large, has become far too quick to cry theft, and I don't think it's really fair to force people to change their characters for coincidental similarities to others. So the next time you see a character that's similar to yours, instead of having a knee-jerk reaction and calling theft, take a deep breath and look at the situation. Consider how common the similar aspects are, and whether or not it's likely that this person is familiar with your work. If you've considered these factors and theft still seems likely, then politely, yes, politely contact the person. A lot of people who have this problem are young, new to OCs, or otherwise inexperienced, and may genuinely not know any better. I know I didn't when I was young. Flaming them right off the bat is not going to help anyone. Now, there may be cases where the thief is aware of what they're doing and is trying to get away with it regardless. And in those situations, you will have to report it and get administrators involved. But don't jump to that conclusion at first sight. In most cases, these things can be dealt with civilly and don't require invoking drama. All in all, yes, character theft is not okay, and you should never intentionally try to take or copy someone else's character. But on the same token, it's okay to have a design that happens to be similar to someone else's, especially if it's a more generic or naturalistic design. And you shouldn't flip out every time you see a character with a color scheme and/or markings similar to yours. Each case is individual and needs to be dealt with as such. So with that in mind, happy drawing!